Hello, everyone. Good to be with you again. My name is James Sanderson, and we are going to continue our study in the book of Revelation, and I hope you are enjoying it. Because remember, it's the only book in the Bible that says you'll be blessed if you read it, hear it, and take it to heart. And I pray that we can do that today. All right, let's get started. So, a couple weeks ago, we looked at the storyline being revealed, and it starts in chapter 6 of Revelation. And it's really going to tell a story throughout the book. And it started with the seven seals. So remember, Jesus is given this scroll. It is sealed up, seven seals, and he is the only one is worthy to be able to open it. So that must have something to do with his death, his burial, and his resurrection. That's what makes him worthy to open this up. And it's really what makes our story be able to happen, right? I mean, it's because of what Jesus has done for us. So here's the storyline. And remember, this is written to the seven churches of Asia, so it's dealing with them. So you have four riders on these horses, right? They're all different colors. And this first horse, I believe, is Jesus. And it's almost like he's just starting out saying, look, here's the end of the story. I win. I win. That pure horse, that white horse, he wears a crown. He wins. But what's the rest of our story while we're on this earth? There's some tough times, isn't there? Well, it's no different for the seven churches of Asia. So you have the red horse, which is war. And then you have the black horse, which is famine. And then the pale horse, which is death. That's the world we live. And that was specifically the world that the seven churches of Asia lived in. Now, who is bringing that? Well, in the context, that is Rome, dealing with the seven churches of Asia. There's Caesars and their false religion and their worship of the Caesars. All of that, Rome is choking down these Christians' world. But that's persecution, and that's going to cause them a great deal of pain. In fact, some of them, because of that, are going to die. And God allows that. He gives them power to do this. So he allows this. So then these Christians are pictured as being dead. They died. They went up to the throne room of God, and they're underneath the throne, actually, and they're underneath the altar. Again, I think this is the altar of incense, and that's where the prayers go up to remind God to keep his promises in the Old Testament. Well, here they're up underneath this altar, and they have a request. The prayers, how long, God, before you avenge our blood? That's seal number 5. And then comes seal number 6. Here's God's answer. I'm going to take care of your problem. There's the good news, right? And so this storyline is going to be played out through the rest of the book of Revelation. This is all found in chapter 6. And God says, okay, I'm going to bring judgment down and I'm going to take care of your enemy when I decide, in my time. So that brings us to in what I would call an intermission, chapter 7. And this is the first of 3 intermissions. And what it is it's really the story within the story. It's a different way of writing. We're not used to that. We just want to get into a story. We read it from the beginning to the end, and then here's the end of the book, and then we understand it, right? Revelation is different. It's written differently, and these people would have understood that. But it's the story within the story. So this is intermission number 1. And before he brings down that judgment, he wants God's people to know that they have hope. And then that chapter, he seals the people of God. Okay? So the 7th seal is going to roll into the 7 trumpets. Okay? So we're not really going to have a 7th seal. It's going to roll into the 7 trumpets. Again, a different way of writing. Okay? And so before that happens, we're going to see in just a minute, there's going to be silence before God brings down his judgment. And then we move into the 7 trumpets. This is the 7 trumpets of warning. God is warning the world before he brings down his judgment. Because God is merciful. He doesn't want to harm man. But if man refuses to come to him, he eventually will bring that down. So here's the second part of these sevens. There were 7 seals and then the 7 trumpets. Here comes God's judgment. And that's what we're going to see today. And what we're going to see today is basically taking God out of the box. And what I mean by that is, as we come along, we have a set way of doing things, right? With God. We believe God can do this, he can do this, but he can't do this. And we kind of put him in a box. We know who God is, and we all have our different thoughts of who he is and what he can do, what he can't do. And the book of Revelation is going to just destroy that for us. He's going to take God out of the box for us and go, wait a minute. He is way bigger than you ever thought or ever imagined. And that's what I love about the book of Revelation. So let's get started today. So left the 7 seals, and we're going to roll into the 7 trumpets. Here it comes. Chapter 8, verse 1. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half hour. Now, silence. And remember what he's doing is he's bringing that judgment. He's answering the Christian's prayer. Avenge our blood, Lord. And so there's silence in heaven. Now you think about that. We live here in Texas. Before I lived here, Oklahoma. There's a lot of these, right? Don't know if you've ever seen a tornado or been in a tornado. I have never seen one. They have been all around me as I've lived in Oklahoma and Texas, but I've never actually seen one. But I'm told just before the storm, there is silence. And I think there's an equation here, okay, or equating these two together. Before God brings his judgment, there's silence. Everything is quiet. And I saw the 7 angels, here it comes, who stand before God. And to them were given what? 7 trumpets. Now, you just think about a trumpet and you think about what a trumpet does. These are trumpets of warning. And you'll see that in the Old Testament when the trumpets were used. They were used to summon Israel, okay, to break camp, to call to worship. They started their feast days with this. And we see this in Numbers chapter 10, 1 through 10. That's what the purpose of trumpets were. It's to get Israel's attention. So God here, in Ezekiel chapter 33, he uses it for warning. So God here is warning the world of the judgment that he's about ready to bring down. It's just like the Coast Guard, right? They go out and they try to get these boats to, stop smuggling drugs in the United States, and they want to stop those boats. They'll take those guns and shoot warning shots over the top and say, look, if you keep going, if you don't stop, the next bullet is going to be for you. Again, these are God's warning shots. So here it is. Verse 3, another angel who had a golden censer. Now, where do we see that? We'll see that in the temple, Old Testament. You go up with that golden censer to burn incense, right? Came and stood at the altar of incense. He was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints. And what are the prayers of the saints? How long, God? How long? On the golden altar before the throne, the smoke of the incense together with the prayers of the saints went up before God from the angel's hand. So what does this tell you? Does God hear our prayers? Absolutely. Did he hear the 7 churches of Asia's prayers? Yes. Is he concerned about them? Absolutely. Is he involved in their lives? Yes. Just as much as he is ours. Just as much. So there they are, under the altar of incense, right? And they say, how long? That was chapter 6. How long, God, before you avenge our blood down here on earth? Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and what? Boom, here it comes. Hurled it to the earth. And there came peals of thunder, rumblings, flashing of lightning, and an earthquake. Now there it is, all of that, right? All that is happening. So here comes God's power, and he's using these angels to bring down this wrath upon the earth. So there it is, throwing that wrath down. So here comes trumpet number 1. Here's trumpet number 1. Verses 6 through 7. Then the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to sound them. The first angel sounded his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled down upon the earth. A third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Okay, now again, this is just a picture. Don't make this literal. But you think about that. Has God done this before? And I think when I read this and I think about this, I thought about the plagues that God brought down on Egypt, on Pharaoh, right? I mean, look at the hail. And the hail would be mixed with lightning. Okay, go back and read this. You'll see this in Exodus chapter 9, verses 22 through 26. So there would be lightning and fire, okay? And they would be mixed together. And all of that came down on Pharaoh. And it destroyed all the crops in the whole land of Egypt. Egypt was an absolute mess. And what's God trying to do? He's trying to warn this guy. He's trying to get his attention. Listen to me. Turn to me. He just wouldn't do it, would he? There's the warning shots. God's been giving warning shots all through this life, all through this world, all through history. But they don't listen. Here's trumpet number 2, verses 8 and 9. The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain all ablaze was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea was turned into blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. So here comes warning shot number 2, right? Trying to get the world's attention, okay? Those that do not follow God. Well, what did that remind us of? Well, it reminded me of the Red Sea, right? Or the Nile River. I'm sorry. The Nile River was turned into blood back there in Exodus, right? And what happened to the fish? The fish died. They turned it, the fish turned up. So again, what was God doing with Egypt? Giving them warning shots? Trying to get Pharaoh's attention? Listen to me? He doesn't want to bring this pain down on Egypt or anybody. But if people won't listen, this is what he does. He's been doing this for a long time on this earth, hasn't he? I wonder what he's doing today in our world. And then you come to trumpet number 3. And we find this in verses 10 and 11. The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star blazing like a torch fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is woodworm. Now this is interesting. A third of the waters turned bitter. Hang on to that word bitter. And many people died from the waters that had become bitter. Bitter water. Okay? So we find this actually in the King James Version, where several times in the Old Testament the word woodworm will be used. Okay, King James, New King James. These are the instances where they're found. Now our newer translations today will use the word bitter. It's the same thing. Bitterness that God would bring down on his nation, Israel, because they would not listen to him. Proverbs talks about the prostitute, and she would bring bitterness, right? And poison. Okay, bitterness. Here's all your examples. Go back and read those. And then I'm thinking about this story again with the Exodus. And I thought about when they came to this place, I think it was Elam, where there was bitter water. They couldn't remember as they traveled through the wilderness, They just crossed the Red Sea, the Israelites, and they needed water, and they found some water, but it was bitter. It was bitter. And so what happened? God took this log and told Moses to throw this log into the water to make it sweet so the people could drink. And I always wondered, what was the connection? Could that be the cross, where God is taking something that is so bitter, and yet in the end, it brings sweetness? Jesus. I don't know if there's a connection or not, but those are just some thoughts of mine. You wrestle with that. The text doesn't specifically say, but I just wondered about that. So then we come to trumpet number 4. This is found in verse 12 of chapter 8. The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark, a third of the day was out without light, and also a third of the night. This is interesting, okay? God's like turning the lights out here. Guess what that reminded me of? Going back to Egypt, right? When God took the sun and turned it off for 3 days. And remember what God was doing back here in Egypt. He was destroying all the gods of Egypt. He's saying, look to the sun god, I'll turn your God off for 3 days. Now who's God, right? But again, that darkness. And what was God doing back in Egypt? The same thing he's doing in the book of Revelation, and probably the same thing he's doing today. He's trying to send warning shots to get this world's attention turned back to me. Okay? The enemies of God's people. The question is, will they listen? And this is found in Exodus 10, 21 and 22. Verse 13, as I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in midair cry out in a loud voice. Here it is. Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the trumpet blast about to be sounded by the other 3 angels. It's like those were warning shots, but they weren't that bad. But it's going to get worse. So here it comes. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Eagle flying through, right? Or an angel, depending on your translation. So here it comes. And this reminds me of Amos chapter 4. If there was ever a chapter in the Bible that really reminds me of warning shots, it's this chapter right here. Well, let's go back and look at Amos 4. Now, just give you a little history here. The nation of Israel had been divided into two parts here. You had the northern tribe to the north. They had 10 tribes to the north and 2 tribes to the south. One was Judah to the south. North was Israel. Okay? God is sending Amos to the northern tribe. Okay? And what is he doing? He's blowing the trumpet. He's trying to warn them. Watch how he warns them. So go over here if you would. Turn over here to the book of Amos. Here's warning shot number 1. Amos is in your minor prophets. So it's going to be past Daniel, past Hosea, past Joel. You're going to come to Amos, chapter 4, verse 6. Now look what the prophet's telling the northern tribe of Israel. Go to Bethel and sin. Go to Gilgal and sin yet more. Bring your sacrifices every morning and your tithes every 3 years. Go through your religious ceremonies, okay? Burn leavened bread as a thank offering and brag about your free will offerings, and then boast about them, you Israelites, for this is what you love to do. Okay? Religious, but not. Love to brag. Look at verse 7 and 8. I didn't read 6, I'm sorry. I gave empty stomachs in every city and lack of bread in every town, yet you have not returned to me, declares the Lord. What did he do? He's giving a warning shot here. because you love to do this, I'm going to give you a warning shot. I'm going to take away your bread in every town. Can God do that? Is he that powerful? Well, certainly he can. He can cause a famine, right? Now, look at verse 7 and 8. I withheld rain from you, and when the harvest was still 3 months away, I sent rain on one town, but withheld it from another. One field had rain, another had none, and dried up. People staggered from town to town for water, yet it did not get enough to drink. Yet you have not returned to me, declares the Lord. There's warning shot number 2. Look at warning shot number 3. Here's number 3. Many times I struck your gardens and vineyards. I struck them with blight and mildew. Locusts devoured your fig and olive trees. Yet you have not returned to me, declares the Lord. Warning shot number 3. Here's number 4. Verse 10, I sent plagues among you as I did Egypt. I killed your young men with a sword. I filled your nostrils with the stench of your camps. Yet you have not returned to me, declares the Lord. There's another warning shot. Here's number 5, verse 11. I overthrew some of you as I overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. See, he's done this before, hasn't he? History. You were like a burning stick snatched from the fire, yet you have not returned to me, declares the Lord. There's another warning shot. But then he ends it up with this. Therefore, this is what I will do, Israel, and because I will do this to you, prepare to meet your God. You didn't listen to the warning shots, so here comes the whirlwind. That's what he did to the time of Amos, and the Assyrians came down and hauled them away into slavery with hooks in their nose. God's people. Do you see who God is? Do you see how he operates? Yes, he does. Well, when these 3 woes come, he's stepping up the judgment. I gave you 3 warning shots. They were light. These next ones are going to be tough. Or he gave you 4. Now he's going to give you the three tough ones. Woe, woe, woe. Here's number 1. Trumpet number 5. We're going to go to chapter 9, verses 1 through 11. The 5th angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. This is interesting. The abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke of a gigantic furnace. The sun and the sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss, and out of the smoke locusts came down upon the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. Now again, don't make this literal. This is a picture. What kind of pictures do you get from locusts? What kind of pictures do you get from scorpions? That's what's happening here, okay? So here's a star that's fallen from the sky to the earth. Interesting, okay? It was given a key to open up the abyss. Now, just think about this. Did Satan not fall? Was he not a fallen angel? Did he fall to this earth? Right? And here's Satan is given this key. I think this is Satan. Let me try to show you that. Well, we see this over in Luke chapter 10 when he sends out the 72. He sent them out 2 by 2. It says in Luke, the 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. He replied, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Kind of the same picture, isn't it? The same picture. So let's think about Satan. What's the Bible say about Satan? Well, it says in Revelation 12:9, we haven't got there yet, that he leads the whole world astray. That's what he does. He masquerades like an angel of light, 2 Corinthians 11:14. He's the tempter of evil, 1 Corinthians 7:5. The devil who deceives them. He's a deceiver, Revelation 20:10. And woe to the earth and the sea, for the devil has gone down to you, Revelation 12:12. Where's he went to? Where's he at? He's in our world, isn't he? Yeah. He was in the 7 churches of Asia's world. He's been in the world since Adam and Eve. Here he is. And we've all had to deal with them, haven't we? Yes. So he's given the key to the abyss. The abyss. You just think about that. Look at that deep, deep hole. What is this? The key to the abyss. Well, let's find out. Let's see if we can figure this out. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. So where again is this judgment going? It's going to God's enemies, the church's enemies, not the church. They were not given power to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. That kind of reminds me of Job, right? When Satan was trying Job, testing Job, right? He was given limits by God. You can't take his life, but you can do this, you can do this, and you can do this, right? And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes a man. During those days, men would seek death but will not find it. They will long to die. Get rid of my picture here. But death will elude them. Okay? Just wanting to die. That's how bad this is. So it's seen as these locusts, right? Now think about this. Can God use Satan to torment the world by using the torment of the world, the torment of sin? Is that a warning? Think about this, okay? Back in my drinking days, I would drink and get drunk and have a terrible, terrible, terrible hangover. The sin that I did always had bad consequences. Was that a warning from God to say, you know what, you not need to go there anymore? Was that a warning? So can God use the sin of this world when he opens up this key to the abyss? Is he just, it's the world. What does the world have? It's filled with all the sin. Is he using that as a warning, going, do you really want to go here, guys? Is that what he's doing here? Can he use Satan as his pawn to show the world how evil sin is? I think he can. I think that's what he's doing here. I think he's been doing it for a long time. Because remember, he was given power. Power can only come from God. The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. And on their heads they wore something like crowns of gold. Okay? Remember, Satan is called the prince of the earth. But he's not really the prince. Jesus is the prince. The only reason that Satan is a prince, and the only reason that he wears something like a crown of gold, is because this world follows him. But Jesus is the true prince. And their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like woman's hair, and their teeth were like lion's teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. Okay? Again, this is God's judgment on Rome and that Roman world that is persecuting the church. A warning shot. So there you've got a picture of the chariots, right? The battle. These people would have been familiar with this. This would have been something that they were very familiar with. Again, painting a picture for them. There's that locust, right? It's just out killing people. Okay, it's a picture. Don't make it literal. Unfortunately, this is what our world does. Now remember, our world is taking the book of Revelation, trying to point it to the future. It hasn't happened yet. It hasn't been fulfilled yet. There's some big battle that's coming, but they've left context. Now watch what they do. They turn the scorpions into a helicopter gunship, so you can relate to something today. Okay, look what they say. Oh, it's a crown of gold, right? Breastplates of iron underneath, right? Tail like a scorpion. There's the propeller. Faces like men. There's men in there. Wait a minute. This is left context. Okay? Stay with context. This is not talking about a helicopter gunship in the 21st century or beyond, okay? Verse 10. They had tails and stings like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. They had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew was what? Abaddon, and in the Greek, Apollyon. Okay, well, who's this guy? Who's this king that's over them? That's over the abyss? Gave two names. Let's find out who it is. In the Hebrew, Abaddon means destruction. And in the Greek, Apollyon means destroyer. You know, both names fit Satan very well. He's a liar and deceiver and rules this world through deception and falsehood. It's Satan. It's Satan. But I love this. He was given power. Richard Rogers, when he taught us a book of Revelation and went through the Old Testament, he would always picture Satan as this ferocious dog. But the key is, who is holding the chain? It's God. Satan can only go as far as God allows him. That means that God is in total control here. Total control, and he always has been. Does that do something for you? Sure does for me. It's good to know that God's in control. Not him. He's not in control. He can't go anywhere that God doesn't allow him to, right? Richard Rogers would give this picture when he was growing up. He said there was this dog that lived next door. He was on a chain, big ferocious dog. And you know how they could, when they walk the outer line, they'll actually wear down the grass. There'll just be a walk line all the way in a half circle there, okay, coming out from the house from the chain. Well, that's what happened. And every day a cat would walk out there, a neighbor's cat, and he would go out there and taunt that dog. That dog would fly over to him, and all of a sudden the chain would catch. He couldn't go any farther, and he'd fall over. It was just comical. Richard loved to watch that, he said. And that was a picture. That's how he pictures Satan. God's got the chain. Satan can only go so far. God is using him to show this world and to torment this world. And look, man, if you want to follow Satan and sin, this is how bad it's going to be. And there's always bad consequences for sin, isn't there? There is. I've been in a bunch of them. There's those locusts. So ultimately, this is God's judgment. This is not Satan's judgment. So there it is. The first woe was past. 2 others are yet to come. Okay? All right. So here's trumpet number 6, verses 13 through 19. The 6th angel sounded his trumpet, and I heard a voice coming from the horns of the golden altar that is before God. The golden altar. Okay? It said to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels who were bound at the great river Euphrates, and the 4 angels who had been kept ready for this very hour and day and month and year to release to kill 1/3 of mankind. So it's getting worse, isn't it? The number of the mounted troops were 200 million. I heard their number. So here it is, the altar. Remember the altar of incense? Okay? And it actually, if you can see this picture, it had horns on it. On both altars, the altar where they did the animal sacrifices out in the temple courts, and here there were horns on each corner. Now, if you look at that, that means biblically that means authority. Okay, that's what it meant. And whose authority is it? That's God's authority. And what is that smoke that's going up? That altar of incense? That's our prayers going up. God hear us, and He is answering those prayers. And so here He is. And he's bringing down this judgment because God cares about us, because he's powerful. So here it comes. So that it shows a power, it shows authority, and it shows strength. All in our favor if you're with God. And then he uses the Euphrates River. They would have been familiar with this. A lot of battles took place. A lot of armies crossed this river. So here's the Euphrates River, and the four angels are held back at the Euphrates River. So this would have been a picture that they would have understood. Again, nothing literal here, but just to show that there's a battle about ready to take place. Now, if we go over to Isaiah 37 here, I want you to think about angels and their power. You think about this with Sennacherib, and you talk about the Assyrians coming, and it says, Then the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, they were all dead bodies. Now, this is the enemies of Israel. They had surrounded Jerusalem. This is Sennacherib and his army from the Assyrians. They're coming down against King Hezekiah. And what does this angel do? One angel. Well, he comes out and drops 185,000 men dead. And the Israelites go out. There they are. They're all laying there. Is that powerful? We sing that song, if Jesus could have called 10,000 angels, he wouldn't have had to have called 10,000. He would have just had to call one, because that's how powerful they are. Where do they get their power, though? From God, from Jesus. It's amazing. It's amazing. Back to Revelation 9. The horses and riders I saw in my vision looked like this. Their breastplates were fiery red, dark blue, yellow as sulfur. Their heads of the horses resembled the heads of iron lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and sulfur. A third of mankind was killed by the three plagues of fire, smoke, and sulfur that came out of their mouths. The power of their horses was in their mouths and in their tails, for the tails were like snakes of heads, of which they inflicted injury. Just a picture here, okay? It sounds like a bad nightmare, doesn't it? And it is. It is for the inhabitants of the earth, and in the context, dealing with the seven churches of Asia and Rome and their Caesars and their false religion. So there's just a picture. 200 million of them. What an army. If you had that army on your side, you got nothing. I mean, nothing to worry about. I think that's what God's trying to tell them. I'd hate to be on the wrong side here, though. Verse 20 and 21. The rest of the mankind that was not killed by the plagues, here's the problem, still did not repent of the work of their hands. They didn't repent. They saw all of this and they're still not getting it. How many times has God brought judgment down on this earth in time and man didn't wake up? We see it with Pharaoh. We see it with the Egyptians. We see it with the Israelites. We see it with the Babylonians. We saw it with Nebuchadnezzar as we went through him. So many times he didn't wake up. It took him a while, okay? It's taken me a while. It may have taken you a while. The question is, are we waking up? Well, for a lot of people, they don't. They did not stop worshiping demons and the idols of gold, silver, bronze, stone, and wood, idols that cannot speak, hear, or walk. They didn't stop worshiping them. Nor did they repent of their murders, their magic arts, their sexual immorality, or their thefts. They didn't repent. God was saying to the world, repent, or it's going to get worse. And that's going to lead us into the 7 bowls of wrath. Do you see the picture? This is the story that all of us have been living all of our lives. It's been all through since creation. It's the same story played out again and again. And here it is in the book of Revelation. And what it does is just brings the whole Bible together. Church, I hope you've been blessed. Hope you see how powerful God is. And I hope you're allowing yourself to take God out of the box and just see how powerful He is. Hey, we'll see you next time. Next week, Lord willing, we will be in chapter 10, looking at chapter 10, and it's going to be another intermission that we're going to look at. Okay? Hey, God bless you. If you got any questions, give me a holler. Get on my email. Get it to the Brown Street Church of Christ. Love to talk to you about this. I don't have all the answers, but if you have questions, please don't hesitate to call or email me. Love you guys. See you next time.